Good evening, everyone, or formal good evening, I want to say. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Deborah Bauer. I'm the founder and president of the Save Deer Run Citizens Action Group. Thank you for joining us tonight in what has been our second virtual town hall. We have a lot of information that I have to give you all, a lot of updates. So if you don't have something to write with, and you will want to grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, because there's lots of details and I'm going to have to move fairly quickly. What we're going to start with insofar as an agenda is I'm going to be going over, I'm actually going to start at the end point, which is next Tuesday, July 27th, be going over what is going to be happening on that day, how it will impact you all, and what I desperately need your help with as HOA members, as residents, as friends of Deer Run, and supporters of everything that we've been working for over the last 3 years. Then what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to be giving a brief presentation with the disclaimer that while the PowerPoint I will be showing you some slides from was given to the steering committee meeting members yesterday by Seminole County staff. As many of you all know, although sometimes I'm down at the county services building enough to be confused for a county employee, I am not one. It is their presentation, not mine, but I will be repeating what they shared with the steering committee meeting members as a brief overview. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're being joined tonight by our home county commissioner for District 1, Commissioner Bob Dallari, and I'm going to turn the floor over to him at that point, so that if anyone has questions, if anyone has comments that they want to make, to share with Commissioner Dallari. And if you are unable to do so, if you are unable to attend the commission meeting next week, this is your opportunity to do so, because what will happen is next Tuesday, when the issue comes before the commission, when the commissioners are going down the line, for those of you who don't know how this works, and they're going to submit to the clerk what they call ex parte communication on the matter before the board. And so any comments, any emails, any conversations he's had, he will at that point then share for the public record and for the other commissioners to have access to. So if you want to make a comment known and you're not going to be able to go to Sanford next Tuesday, tonight is your opportunity to do so. So that's where we're going to begin, because July 27th, over the last 2.5 to 3 years, a lot of people have been asking me, when is it going to be time for us to wear our t-shirts? When is it going to be time to make our signs? When is it going to be time to go down to Sanford? And the answer I now finally have for all of you is Tuesday, July 27th. The County Commission has its regularly scheduled meeting next Tuesday. And on that day, they normally have 2 sessions. They have a morning session that begins at 9:30 in the morning, and they have an afternoon schedule that begins at 1:30. The agenda for that meeting came out a few days ago, and the item of Deer Run is being put under staff reports and public workshops. So I don't remember the exact number that we're down on the agenda, but we're somewhere in the middle of the morning session. Now, the proviso for that is sometimes a lot of those items are what's called consent agenda items, which means they can move very, very fast. And so although we may be 24th or 25th down the line, it can be something where the first 1 or 2 items will maybe take 5 or 10 minutes. And then before you know it, the next 20 items are done in 5 minutes. So what I am going to ask everyone who is interested in attending, please meet us in the parking lot by 9 o'clock. You're going to see us in the parking lot outside the county services building. For those of you who are unfamiliar with where that building is, the address is 1101 East 1st Street in Sanford. It's right down in the water, not very far from Fort Mellon Park. It's not too far. It's a few blocks from the Wayne Dench Performing Arts Center, Sanford Civic Center. If you've ever been down to Riverwalk, some of the restaurants that are down there, Sanford Museum, it's all along the waterfront. There's usually plenty of parking, but depending on how big a crowd is, I'm going to ask us to try and carpool as much as possible. And to that end, I know we have several seniors that either are unable to drive or other people who are not having easy access to a ride. So if there are any people that are willing to act as carpoolers for us to get people down, or if you are in need of a ride to get down there, please let me know. Not so much in this meeting, but if you can send me an email, give me a phone call. Most everyone has my contact information. We will find a way to get you down to Sanford. Unfortunately, the option that we had in the past during the pandemic, where we had the opportunity to participate remotely via Zoom calls, has been discontinued. And so you will not have that option. You will not have the ability to call in or join via Zoom. So there are a couple of other ways that you can see the meeting if you are unable to attend in person. It will be for those of you who have Spectrum cable, charter cable. You will have the ability to view it on SGTV, Seminole Government Television. Or if you don't have Spectrum, which I know many of us, including myself, do not, then you will be able to watch it on Seminole Government has a channel on YouTube, and we will provide the link if any of you don't know how to find it, but it's really easy. You just type in Seminole County Government, it pops right up, and then they stream it live on YouTube. So it can be viewed from any internet source, or if any of you all have something like Apple TV or a Fire Stick or Roku, you can watch it on the YouTube app. What I'm going to ask here's for those of you who are going to be able to attend in person. Anyone has a right to comment from the public as long as you fill out a few procedures. And for those of you who may be nervous about doing this, it's really not that big a deal. They have what are called speaker forms that are presented at the back of the auditorium. Each individual is allowed a total of 3 minutes. You fill out the speaker form, you submit your name, your address, pertinent details, and the issue that you're going to want to speak on, and then you will submit it for public comment. When it comes up, the the chair of the meeting, Commissioner Constantine, will then go down the list, and each person who wishes to speak will be given their 3 minutes. Here is what I'm going to ask, because Deer Run has the best residents, we have the classiest citizens, we have the most well-informed, and I'm going to brag on you all. I think we have some of the best people in all of Seminole County and beyond when it comes to behavior, for making our voices known in an intelligent, civil, and classy way. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do, first and foremost, if you do speak, please keep to your 3 minutes. There is nothing that is worse, for those of you who have never attended a county commission meeting, when you have gone over your 3 minutes and the commissioners, particularly the chair, are trying to be polite to you and asking you to wrap up, and you keep droning on, and you've got 15, 20, 30, sometimes even 100 people after you. I don't think that will be the case on Tuesday, but if you choose to speak, please keep your comments brief, on topic, and to the point. The next thing that I want to ask everyone to do is please remain civil. I know this would seem like something you're thinking, why is Bauer mentioning this? And again, it's never been an issue for Deer Run, but I like it. I think it's the teacher in me. I like to have covered all of my bases so that I can say, if I have to yell at someone when I'm doing my cranky teacher face, as I'm kind of helping everyone get organized in the room. If you have something to say, I encourage you to say it. I'm a big advocate of free speech. But my mother always used to say that you can say anything to anyone if you say it in the right way. So please don't insult, please don't be discourteous, even though these are things that we all feel very strongly about. I know the majority of you all, I think most of you will know that no one feels stronger about Deer Run and saving Deer Run and getting this situation resolved in a way that's something that helps preserve the land and that's favorable to our residents more than I do. But I don't want to do it in a way that in any way comes off as aggressive, hostile, or impolite. So please think carefully about what you want to say, and then just get up and speak your piece. The last bit of advice that I can give everyone, especially for those of you who are going to be speaking a little bit down the line compared with some of the people who will go first, is we understand that some of you all will have things that you wanted to say will have been said already by previous people. So if you get up and you have submitted a form and then you want to say, I don't really want to speak, just please enter my name into the record of having been in support of this, you have the option to do that, even if you've filled out a speaker form. What I'm asking everyone not to do is, if you don't have something new to add, please don't get up there and make this be longer and drawn out than it needs to be, because I want us to come off as very professional. I want us to be the wonderful, sparkling, contributing members of Seminole County that I know we are when we go up to make our voices heard. If anyone is between now and Tuesday concerned or worried or uncertain what they should say, how they should say it, is it okay for me to say this? Please, again, call me, email me. That's why I'm here to help. The other thing that I would very strongly encourage any of you to do, if you cannot attend on Tuesday, because I know it's during the morning, I'm thinking, although I can't say for certain, but when we had the steering committee meeting, Rick Durr, who is head of leisure services, who gave the presentation, suggested that we be there closer to 9:30. If I were a betting woman, having gone through most of these type of meetings before, I don't think we're going to be right at 9:30, because there are a few pieces of business that the commission has to attend to first. But I would be very surprised if we weren't up within the first hour. So if you are unable to get there, because I know many of you have kids, you're working, you have full-time jobs, 9:30 is not the most convenient time to go down to Sanford for a civic matter like this, that's okay. What I would suggest is, many of you still have those wonderful emails that we've had when we've asked you to send out emails to your commissioners. Feel free to email them between now and then and simply say, I know the agenda on the 27th for the commission meeting in the morning session, the matter of Deer Run is coming up. I am unable to attend in person, but I am asking that my comments be added to the public record as a part of this. I know that Commissioner Dallari's aide, Kendra Young, loves receiving our emails, and never has there been a more patient and graceful woman on the face of the earth who has helped us get where we are, aside from Kendra. So if you don't feel comfortable emailing to all 5 commissioners, you can send them to Kendra's email, and I know she will collate them to give them to Commissioner Dallari to present to the other commissioners. If anyone has any questions about any of this, again, please reach out, please contact me. The last thing that I'll say in regards to coming on Tuesday, if any of you have your Save Deer Run shirts, please wear them. If you don't have a Save Deer Run shirt, we do still have a few. Patty Hanna over in Fairway Oaks still has them. We will get you one. If you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, or you don't want to wear a Save Deer Run shirt, then I'm asking you all to wear green, because green is our color. If you have your yard signs, I'm going to be taking mine. I'm going to be holding mine in the audience, because nothing says something so much as a visual statement. Sometimes a picture can be worth 1,000 words. So feel free, please consider bringing your Save Deer Run sign to hold in the audience. And I'm also going to be asking for a few volunteers over the weekend to help me make some signs, some signs that say something like Deer Run supports a county park, help preserve our green space, Save Deer Run, things like that. So if anyone is interested in helping me with that, I know we've got some more artistic people than I am. That would be wonderful. That having been said, I am now going to go ahead and I'm going to start screen sharing and giving you guys a taste, for those of you who have not seen it or have not been able to view the emails that I sent out this afternoon. A lot of this information has come to us within the past 48 to 72 hours. This is a copy of the presentation that the steering committee was given. And this is the presentation that staff will be making to the commission on Tuesday. This is 69 slides, and this is the condensed version. I am not going to be going over all of it for us, largely because a very significant amount has to do more with Wekiva than with us. And while Wekiva is very important, I know especially to their people, it's for our purposes and for our time, I want us to focus on the matter that's brought us here, which is Deer Run. So a lot of this at the beginning you may have seen before, but for those of you who may have forgotten or need a refresher, the last time that we met and that we talked about things was on March 28th. And on Tuesday, March 28th, a number of us were down in Sanford again. We were at a county commission meeting, and at that county commission meeting, The commissioners voted in favor. It was a unanimous vote, by the way, just for those of us who need to be refreshed, to authorize up to $130,000 to complete what the county has been referring to as a due diligence process. What that means in English, for those of you who may be not 100% certain, it means that the county commission felt that there was enough public interest to justify funds to conduct a number of testing, assessments, and studies to figure out what was going on with the property at Deer Run and at the property of Wekiva. They wanted to see what the status was, how much the appraised value was worth, what was going on with the structures, studying environmental concerns, and there were a total of about 10 different tests that were conducted once on March 28th. Staff got the go-ahead to have the funding to conduct these different tests. Those tests were conducted between March 28th and roughly about June 15th, the middle of June. It went a little bit longer actually than they thought it would, largely because there were some issues at Wekiva that took a little bit longer than what the county staff had anticipated. But as of last week, all of those tests were completed, and we found out some of the information we were waiting for. Again, these are some of the information that were presented way back in February at the community town hall meeting that was held at Metro Life Church. Most of these are not new, but you can just, again, to refresh your memory, these were ideas that if the county did decide to purchase the Deer Run property, this is what a very early conceptual plan might look like when it came to current waterways and how they might be adjusted later on. So here are your lists of what staff has come up with for if the property was bought by the county, what needed to be done initially, in what order, and how much would it cost. And very quickly, what became going on day one, if the county bought the property and it closed tomorrow and took title, what would need to be done? And the very first things that would be concerns, and there's concerns for us, especially for those of you who have homes that abut the course, were getting some of the trees and trees cut back, making sure that the actual physical landscape was being cared for. It was being mowed and weeded and things like that, getting some of the waterways unclogged. They call this property stabilization. There was also some concern about locking down some of the existing structures that are on the course. Right now, there are about a half dozen structures throughout the entire property. Those include the old clubhouse, the maintenance shed, a restroom in the front 9, which is a freestanding restroom building, which is right across the street from the entrance to Stroney Park Elementary, and about 3 or 4 sheds on the property. The idea was that on day one, stabilization of these properties and the property itself would need to be conducted. Then within this first phase, because the county municipal government loves phases for when it comes to very complex projects like this. The idea would be that in the first phase, in the initial park development program, phase 1, you would see construction of an approximate 3-mile multi-purpose trail system, pedestrian bridges, construction of some picnic areas, nature trails, a multi-purpose open space, and also refurbishment right out the bat of the old clubhouse to be converted into a community building, community center. This would also include, phase 1 would also include some different things when it came to stormwater treatment systems, waterway restoration, and some different improvements when it comes to the environmental impact of the course. All of this would be in phase 1. And the question that I asked yesterday of county staff is, and again, I should preface this, and I'm going to say this several times throughout tonight's presentation, please forgive me, but I really want to nail something home to everyone. These are preliminary, early, do not hold me to this. Do not please write this down and consider this something that is set in stone. Preliminary numbers, timeframes. But I asked them, just for argument's sake, what would be a time frame on a phase 1 development? And assuming that nothing horrible like COVID comes in and interrupts things again, 1 year time frame from the day the county takes title was when we would hope to have this phase 1 completed. I know that I've gotten several emails and several comments from residents who know that the county has been using the Rolling Hills Park as a model, as kind of a blueprint to give an idea for how to go forward at Deer Run. And there's been some concern because the county bought the property in 2016, and here we are 5 years later. And although there has been some movement, it's been difficult because it's still a very complicated situation. People have asked me, are we going to be waiting 5, 6, 7, 8 years to see that similar outcomes at Deer Run? And what I was asked to share with you all is not really. And here's the reason why. Number one, as you all know, no one could have anticipated COVID-19 happening. That caused a problem. It caused every other project that was not essential to fighting the pandemic to have the county focus on treatment and dealing with the issues that were brought about by the pandemic. And so that slowed everything down by about 18 months. There were also tremendous environmental remediation issues at Rolling Hills that caused having to move a lot of dirt, having to take arsenic out of the soil, having to clean things up. That took a lot of time, and those things had to be done at great time, great expense, and at the cost of great manpower before things that are recreational in nature could be available for the public to use. Neither of those situations are anticipating being an issue at Deer Run. The main issue that could be a problem for Deer Run is how much funding we will have available for these recreational improvements at any given time. But I'll talk about that a little bit more at a later slide in the presentation. Okay, this is again the conceptual plan from the February Public Works. Has not changed, but it gives you an idea of where they would like to see some of the different waterways restored, some different wetland plantings, things of that nature. If anyone's interested in these things, they're up on the Save Deer Run website. I'm not going to go into further detail on these. Again, this is very much a layout of most of what I've just shared with you, but I will point out on the right is if there is a phase 2, what comes later down the pike, if you will. The phase 2 would be in this additional passive park or additional active recreation development. These are things like playgrounds, exercise stations, possibly a public garden. I know that the county staff keeps sticking in the pickleball courts that they want to get built. It's a running joke for those of you who don't know. One of these days, there's a county staff member who's going to get his pickleball courts. I don't know if it will be a Deer Run, but it keeps showing up on the list. Things like outdoor courtyards, possibly a fishing pier, things like that, a multi-purpose field. It really just depends going forward how we get money, how we get funding, what partnerships, sponsorships, and community donations are made that will expedite phase 2. But again, because I know I would be asked by you all, I asked staff yesterday to give me an idea. Worst case scenario, what would be a very conservative estimate to give us timeline wise for seeing Deer Run as a fully functional active park? And again, Rick was very kind in indulging me, and he said worst case scenario for a phase 2 would probably be 2 to 3 years from close of when the county would take possession of the property. But again, all of that depends on how quickly we get how much money into the project. So that might be less. He didn't think it would be more than 3 years from taking of title. Again, these are mostly things that we've seen before. Again, this is the big chunk on Wekiva that I'm going to skip over, and I'll explain why in just a moment when we get to the appraisal. I've done this correctly in my notes. Okay. So going towards the specific details of what was found out when all of these different tests and appraisals and studies were completed. The most important thing that came about, or one of the most important things I should say, was the actual property appraisal that was completed. So you will see the Deer Run Golf Course was appraised by a firm called Clayton, Roper, and Marshall. And when they tried to figure out highest and best use, what is this property worth, given its current zonings, what the owner could do with it, should he choose to try and do whatever he wished to do with it, they determined that Deer Run was appraised at a fair market price of $6.9 million. A separate appraiser, a second company, Pinnell and Carpenter, was sent out to Wekiva. Wekiva was again appraised highest and best use at $7.88 million. The total package of a fair appraisal for these two properties is $14.78 million. If you remember going back, oh Lord, at least a year, maybe a little bit longer, I guess we're coming up on the year mark, the county entered into a memorandum of understanding with the property owner, the owner who currently owns the former country club at Deer Run. And at that time, in the document that the county signed with the memorandum of understanding, the owner's representative made an offer to the county staff. And basically what the offer that the county was given was a package deal, Deer Run and Wekiva, because he is not willing to separate these two courses at this time, for a purchase price of $14 million. At the time, we didn't know what that $14 million offering price, if it was a fair price, if it was a deal, if we were being charged too much, we being the county. And so that was one of the reasons why having an appraisal was so important. What we've come to find out now is, you can see, with no other considerations being taken into consideration, the 14.78 for both of these properties is already less than what the owner is willing to take. So that's one thing that we determined. A study of some of the different things that revealed in the appraisal, and this is something that I want to emphasize to you all, because I know one of the questions that I've often gotten is, could Deer Run ever be made into a golf course again? And I never say never, because never is a very long time. But the first thing that everyone needs to remember and keep in mind is Deer Run was closed in May of 2019. We are now almost 2 years past that closing. So when the Deer Run Golf Course closed, those structures have been sitting open to the elements. They have not been upkept any more than is required by code. And they've basically been sitting there in the Florida weather and in the elements, deteriorating. What the study came and determined, however, is, as many of you guys know, especially for those of you who've been here for a very long time, we have what I like to call good bones on the course. The clubhouse is in pretty decent shape, is what they determined from a structural perspective. There's some updates, there are some things that would need to be done, particularly when it comes into reference for things like the roof. An HVAC system for AC would need to be put in. There are some considerations that would need to be done for making it ADA handicapped compliant, but we are actually in a better situation than what the case was at Rolling Hills, because Rolling Hills, number one, had been closed for a lot of years by the time the county took possession of the land. But even more so than that, the structures were from the 1950s. They had dilapidated and degenerated so far that the county in good conscience couldn't save them. And so they were all knocked down. That is not the situation of what has to be done at Deer Run. So these are structures that are seen as assets to the property from a county point of view. And although they will need to be updated, they do need some love, as many of you all know. They can be rehabilitated fairly easily. I think I pretty much went over all of that. So this is the clubhouse. This is the maintenance shed. Obviously, some painting would need to be redone. This is the freestanding restroom that's over on the front 9. The process of determining how much money would be needed in the initial phase to bring the clubhouse maintenance complex and the restroom up to snuff, a little over $2 million for the clubhouse, Most of that coming in for the roof and the HVAC system, the maintenance complex at $977,500, the standalone restroom at $195,000 for a total of $3.1976 million. An environmental study, a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental study were conducted, and we have some good news, some great news, and some not so good news, but we don't have any bad news. And that was something that county staff was really, really excited to find out about. So the first thing that we found out about is the major multi-million-dollar soil remediation that had to be done, the soil and water remediation that had to be done at Rolling Hills. That's not necessary here at Deer Run. What they found out is that there are a couple of spots where soil remediation is going to be required, primarily confined to the maintenance area, to the old maintenance shed. And to be quite honest, when staff were getting ready before the phase 1 and phase 2 were ever even conducted, and they were talking to some of the contractors to figure out where hot spots of contamination might exist, almost every single resident and every single contractor said, if they were a betting man, put it on it showing up at the maintenance shed, and guess what? The majority of them are in the old maintenance yard. The maintenance yard, there were a couple of T's in the front 9, particularly near hole 4, that showed a little bit of worry. But the good news is everything was within the first 6 inches of soil, and these are things that could be fairly easily and quickly remediated. And these are not things that are going to require millions and millions of dollars to clean up and multi tremendous work hours for environmental impact to people to go out and clean these things up. Even better news, and the great news, is there was no evidence of groundwater contamination at Deer Run, which I cannot even tell you how excited everyone was, myself included, to find out that our water does not have arsenic and other contaminants in it from the testing. So these are all good things. This is the front where you can see on hole 4. Again, there were a couple of key areas with higher than normal arsenic levels, but not any major cleanup that would be required. Boundary survey was conducted, again, pretty much what was expected. This is where I'm going to be very brief, because I'm going to tell everyone exactly what I was told by county staff, because environmental water is not my thing. I am not an engineer, but we do have someone who's going to be able to speak to some specific questions. So hold any questions that you may have on the environmental stuff that I'm about to put out for you all. One of the first things that was determined, and one of the things that I actually learned something from this, which I love, because anytime I can learn something new about Deer Run, I think it's a great thing. One of the things that we knew is that Deer Run feeds into Lake Howell. I think I've told some of you all before, the water on Deer Run, most of it going underground. The water features go underground. There's an underground river that goes down the front 9. Then it basically curls down what is now Eagle Circle over to what we know is at Lake Sterling, which is the creek that's in the back by the houses at the entrance to Eagle Circle and Redbug Lake Road. And it starts to come above ground. And then it goes underground again, under Redbug Lake, Lake Road. And then it crosses over to the creek that's behind where, actually it's not behind anymore, it's adjacent to where the new Jefferson apartments are, and it feeds into Lake Howell. What I didn't know is that once it goes into Lake Howell, it then, if you see these blue acres, the Howell Creek watershed area, which is basically if you're going over towards, think the English Estates area, think over by, not all the way to Goldenrod, but kind of in that area, what we start to see is Howell Creek acts as the waterway by which water from Deer Run, stormwater runoff and water from Lake Sterling and Lake Howell eventually make its way into Lake Jessup. Lake Jessup is considered an at-risk waterway right now. And so one of the things that would make Deer Run very attractive to the county is anything that it can do to help preserve and clean up Lake Jessup that is a great thing, because one of the benefits that the county anticipates if they take possession of the property is it's no longer going to be used as a golf course. And so nutrients that would have been put onto the grass to keep the fairways and the tees and the land there green and lush as a golf course, those fertilizers are no longer going to have to be used on the golf course. So those pollutants are going to be able to be taken out of our stormwater, and it's going to be better for waterways like Lake Jessup, and then subsequently Lake Jessup, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like they say in Finding Nemo, all water goes to the ocean, which isn't really true, but I wanted to give the movie a pop culture plug just so that people are awake. Maybe they perk up if they hear Disney. Lake Jessup, it's in Florida. All water leads to the St. Johns River, and Lake Jessup is the feeder for the St. Johns River. So anything that we can do in Seminole County to protect Lake Jessup means that we're protecting St. John's, which again for us is protecting our own drinking water, and probably what is the single greatest body of water in the state of Florida. So these are all good things. There's been a lot of talk about what's called consumptive use permit. It's abbreviated as CUP analysis and groundwater modeling. There are some statistics up here that basically summarize why Deer Run would be attractive to the county. The simple version for us, and the two things that I will want to point out is, number one, the CUP permit that currently exists on the golf course expires on June 4th, 2022. So any potential credit that the county would get by taking possession of the course, because the permit comes with the course, that if they don't do anything before June 4th of 2022, then they lose the credit, which is one of the main reasons why this has been an attractive property, in addition to a number of other things that we've already gone over. But that's something that's kind of giving county a reason to watch the clock, if you will. The other thing has to do with some of the different things that the county would get a credit for water consumption, up to a potential value with this potential credit from the CUP water permit at the course would be of a credit of up to 60% of the county. Monetarily, that means that in addition to the assessed properties at the 14.7 million, you've got another $1 million in savings that the county would necessarily be getting out of this. So you can kind of see, if you think about it from the perspective of, is the $14 million that the owner originally offered the county a fair price or not, you can see we're already up to almost $15.7 million. And so it's apparent from this information that's been gathered during the due diligence process, $14 million is more than fair. At least that's my personal opinion. There are some other considerations when it comes to total maximum daily pollutants, which is nutritional load, TMDLs. Again, possibly this goes to environmental impact that I'm sure Commissioner Dallari can speak to when we get to the Q&A. But again, possibly another potential savings of $320,000 up to. So you can see there's a lot of reasons why this is a good deal for the county if it is something that the commission decides to vote in favor of. I'm kind of skipping over the Wekiva because I now want to get to the part that I know a lot of you have been interested in. And that comes to what are bottom numbers. And again, you can look at some of these slides as we go through, but basically what we're looking at is a $14 million price to acquire. And then to actually run the course, to do the improvements that would be needed, to staff the course, to convert it to a park, as we're hoping, some type of park. We're looking at, and again, these are very, very rough numbers. Do not hold us to these. But we're looking at approximately an 8.1 million phase one development with a requirement of about $272,000 for staffing for phase one. And then the next slide, I think, shows phase two, if I've done this correctly, depending on whether there is a passive park or an active park that's developed in phase two. an additional process cost of 2.7 or $2.8 million. So the county is looking at somewhere around, probably for the entire acquisition, phase 1, phase 2, probably it's a $26 to $28 million investment over the next roughly 4 to 5 years is basically what we're thinking. That's where the MSBU comes in. And again, I know many of you are probably asking the simple question, Bauer, get down to business. You've rambled on long enough. Tell me how much I'm going to have to write a check for. Here's where the check writing comes in. An MSBU, and we've talked to some of you about this before, but the county has an apparatus called the Municipal Services Benefit Unit. It is a way by which residents have the ability to voluntarily enter into for lack of a better word, a self-tax for a very specific and very predetermined purpose. For the course at Deer Run, because we have been the one, Save Deer Run, our residents have been the one, I want to remind everyone more than anything, we want to prevent development at Deer Run. And we've been working to try and figure out a way to keep from seeing 221 houses on our drainage system, on our green space, within our planned development. That's something that gives us a stake in this project. So because of that, there has been some preliminary discussion, and according to the survey that was conducted by the county in February and in March, there were over, I think 75% of the, God, I don't even remember anymore, several hundreds of people who responded said they would be interested in entering into an MSBU depending on what the numbers were. The county has come up again with a rough approximation based on Rolling Hills, but the Rolling Hills MSBU was a 15.3% contribution. The equivalent for Deer Run is a self-tax of $2.31 million. What does that break down to? It's hard for us to again give you specifics, but this is what the staff put together. Within Deer Run there, and what was done at Rolling Hills is what's called a tier 1 and a tier 2 assessment model. The tier 1 would be comprised of those people who have houses that directly are adjacent to or abut the golf course property, with the idea being that individuals who are living on the course now have an open view. They don't want to see townhomes, condos, apartments, or houses in their backyards. So there's the idea that those 252 homes that abut the course are going to have the most immediate impact in preventing development. So they would have a higher rate than those who do not live directly on the course. As I said, 252 homes in this projected MSBU model are directly on the course. They would have the higher rate. The adjacent residences, what they're called residential units, they're projected at 2,254 homes in the tier 2. The tier 1 and tier 2, the good news is that means there are almost 2,500 homes that would go into the MSBU on this projection. That means that the 2.3 million would be spread across the tier 1 and the tier 2 over a time period. Oh, there it is. They're helpful. 74% said they would be interested in the survey that was conducted back in the spring about this. So I wasn't that far off. Oh, he took out the map. Okay. So for those of you who weren't at the steering committee meeting, I'm going to do a little bit of reading from my notes now because there was some preliminary discussion. How long would an MSBU period be for? What are the options? And traditionally, there has been either a 10 or 15-year model that was used. What Commissioner Dallari and myself asked is if a 20-year period for payback would be possible. And what that means is not that if an MSBU is passed in Deer Run that everyone would be taking 20 years to pay it, although that's certainly an option because basically it's an assessment that would go onto your property tax bill each year. But the cost for the MSBU, again, roughly, would be, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. The cost for tier 1 would be approximately, and this is over the whole life of the MSBU. This is not per year, so don't become too concerned when I say this. But the cost would be approximately a total of $1,791 for tier 1 homes that live on the golf course, approximately $892 for those who are like me. I live across the street from it. If people wanted to pay that early, and, you know, like I want to write an $892 check and I never want to have to deal with the MSBU payment again, that would be an option that you would have. Otherwise, it would be assessed each year until it was paid off. And for the tier 1 residents at a 20-year model, the cost would be approximately $80 per year. For a tier 2 resident, it would be approximately $50 per year. Again, these are not just the $2.3 million, which is the 15.3%. These have some things like administrative costs, costs to the property appraiser to collect, things like that go into this certain percentage. So you can kind of think of it like financing charge. They're very nice and they include financing charges for us. So for those of you who have been wondering, where do the numbers say? Again, these are very rough, very early ideas, and they are most likely going to change. Here's the good news. I don't think those numbers are going to go up a tremendous amount. I think these are going to stay in the ballpark of $50 for tier 2, around $80 for tier 1. They may go less. A lot of things will go into determining that. But if the county commission on Tuesday decides to proceed forward with the purchase of the course, the MSBU process is what starts next. And the MSBU process is currently, the way that that works is the supervisor of elections sends out a ballot. It's sent to the property owner who has the address as owner of record, on record. So unfortunately, anyone who is a renter would not get to vote in this unless you directly know, if there's a private owner who rents to you, then they would get the ballot. But unfortunately at this time, only property owners would get the ballot. The ballots would go out. You would have a deadline to mail back the ballot by, and we have to have 2/3 of the vote, approximately 65%, have to vote in favor of the MSBU for it to pass. The MSBU, if anyone decides not to return a vote for whatever meeting, for whatever reason, votes that aren't returned are counted as no votes. So what I'm going to need help with, should the county commission proceed forward, as we're really hoping that they do on Tuesday, is I'm going to need the HOA's helps. We're going to be knocking door to door. We will get lists to find out who hasn't returned their ballots. And I'm going to need everyone's help to make sure that people mail in their ballots, make sure they get turned back in, and to see that we get this MSBU passed. Because I really do think a lot of people have said, can't the owner sell it to a person who wants to run it as a golf course? Can't we find another way to save Deer Run? And I honestly believe, going back to that original memorandum of understanding that the county signed with the owner indicated when he submitted into that MOU back in December of last year, at the time, he actually had an active development application submitted to the county for 221 single-family homes on the course. Whether he could get that project passed or not, it's a roll of the dice at this particular point. But what I can tell you is, and I have no reason to believe that this has changed, if the county chooses not to purchase the course to convert to a park, I do believe we will be facing some type of development threat, whether it's by the owner or whether he sells it to someone else. I can't speak for him, and I won't speak for the owners of the course, but they have given us every indication they would like to see the county purchase it. Otherwise, they are going to proceed forward with development applications of some type. So I really do think that this is the best solution we could hope for, because 2.5 years ago, when I all came before you, and I've talked at many of your all's HOAs. I've talked, the very first one I ever went to was Kings Point. I've since talked at Fairway Oaks. I've talked at Sterling Park, a few different HOAs. I'm not remembering them all, but I will tell you, in addition to speaking individually with everyone, knocking on doors, The one thing that I've told you all that I have been fighting for, that Save Deer Run has been fighting for, is to save our homes and to prevent development. If it means that a park is the best and most expedient way to do that, then that is what I am advocating and strongly suggesting that all residents do, because once it becomes a public park, we will work with the county to ensure that there is language within the MSBU that gives us an ownership stake in the process, so that 10, 20, 40, 50 years down the road, however long down the road, if someone in the county decided to say, oh, we've got that land at Deer Run, let's close the park, sell it off, and bring it back for development. I don't want to be 80 or 90 years old and having to get out my Save Deer Run signs and having to do this again in the future. So the county will safeguard us from development. It will protect our green space. It will protect our environmental concerns. It will protect the wildlife. It will protect our environmental easements and conservation areas. In addition to giving us what I think are some really neat recreational opportunities, because the one thing that I will tell you all, and I don't have these numbers yet, but I'm working on getting them. A public park, and again, I'm going back to Rolling Hills. When you compare what property values were for homes in Rolling Hills prior to 2016 when the county purchased it, and then you look at those property values after the county purchases it in 2016, and I think the data goes up to 2019, it's right before the pandemic hit, because the pandemic skews things a little bit when it came to the housing market. But what you see in Rolling Hills is anywhere between 5 and 15% property increases, because now those homes are living next to a wonderful, nice, family-oriented public park. So I really do think that any money that would be coming out of our pocketbooks, and I speak as someone who would be writing a check just like you all, because my home would be in the tier 2. I think that would be offset by the increase in property values that we will have if a wonderful park goes in at Deer Run. So that is now, I have talked almost for 55 minutes. I need to shut up because I have dumped a huge amount of information on you all. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to start the Q&A part of the program, and I'm going to kind of moderate it. All of you are muted right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask if you have a question, either for me or in general or for Commissioner Dallari, please raise your hand and I will unmute you so that one at a time we can get our questions answered. Or if you don't want to speak in person, and I know that there's been a couple of questions in the chat already, I'll get to those in just a second. You can type your question in the chat and I'll read it to everyone. So if anyone has a question or needs clarification, please raise your hand. There's a little icon down under reactions, I think, where if you click on reactions, it says raise hand. Just raise your hand and I will unmute you so you can speak. Or type it in the chat box. I don't see a single hand. I'm going to assume you all are still trying to figure out where the raised hand icon is, because I know you all are not so good. I always get at least one student in my classes having to ask a question. I'm going to tell you all what I tell them, because I know some people may be afraid to ask a question. There is no such thing as a stupid question. The only type of stupid question that is out there is the unasked question. And I can guarantee you, if one of you has a question that's in your mind that you're thinking, should I ask it or not? There are probably 10 others, at least 10 others in the audience who are having the same exact question. So if there's anything that is unclear or that you want to ask for clarification on, please do so. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a couple questions from the chat while we go towards the chat box questions. So Gene Mills, who is the president of Deer Run Property Owners Association #1, has asked, this is his question, are there any other improvements POA #1 and POA #2 can do to reduce the initial costs? And the answer would be not. And again, I'm not speaking for the county, I'm just parroting back what I've been asked them. But as it has been explained to me, the initial assessment amounts for the phase one and for the staffing for the day one boots on the ground is how Rick likes to put it. Rick Durr likes to put it. That's where the MSBU money would, the large majority of it would be going. At this particular point, there wouldn't really be any way for the county to do things like accepting donations or things like that for the phase one. However, where there would be room for things like partnerships, sponsorships, donations is during the phase two, where we would be seeing things like a number, and this is going on at Rolling Hills right now. Rick actually said this at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. There are things like nonprofits, grants that the county will be going after that, you know, if you want to say, for example, if POA number one wanted to sponsor the community garden by making a donation that a community garden will cost X number of dollars and POA number one wants to write the check, then during phase two, that would be something that would be able to be done. And what that does for us is it doesn't lower the MSBU cost, but it does speed up the timeline for us getting access to new recreational activities and apparatuses. Okay, Clifford Birchfield says, is that an annual credit? I'm going to assume that has to do with the cost of the MSBU that I was talking about. I'm a little unsure about your question, Clifford. So if you want to type clarification, this wouldn't be a credit that anyone would be getting. This is a check that would be added on. This would be a bill that would be due with your property taxes every year. Michael has asked, this is a question about the appraisal. So when they say the best use of the land, I'm going to let Commissioner Dallari tackle this one. Commissioner Dallari, do you want to talk about anything that you know about how the appraisal factored in things like development and the PD requirements and zoning, things like that?
Thank you, Deborah. First of all, Deborah, I think you've done a phenomenal job explaining this complex project to the community. And I will tell you, speaking for an hour is not easy, and staying on task is even harder. So well done. When the appraisals looked at these two projects, they looked at them differently. One is because Deer Run is facing development, so they are looking at it from a development standpoint. When they're looking at Wekiva, they're looking at the best use would be from a golf course standpoint, because it's an active golf course and it will remain an active golf course once the property is purchased. It's running in the black, not by a lot, but by quite a bit. So there is no reason to change that at this time. The beauty about Wekiva, and I know you're looking at just Deer Run, Wekiva has more potential environmental impact for us in a positive aspect. So we're banking that for the future. That's why Wekiva makes so much more sense to us. Our commitment to the people in the Wekiva area, as long as the golf course is turning a profit, leave it alone. But that's how that all came about. The annual pieces where they talked about saving of water from the cup or TMDLs, that is an annual thing, Deborah. That's just not one time. That may be what they're asking.
All right, Robert Whitaker has a question. Your hand is raised, so I'm going to ask you to unmute now, and the floor is yours, Robert.
Yes, I think Mr. Commissioner Dallari answered my question. I was, when you said that the CUP expires in June of 2022, I assumed that meant that if the county purchases the golf course before June of 2022, then they would have the rights to renew that CUP. Is that correct?
That is correct, Robert, but please keep in mind that the St. John's Water Management District that controls all the consumptive use permits, they're trying to reduce them. So we will have to negotiate, number one, with the St. John's Water Management District, how much the allocation would be moving forward for the renewal. And then we'd have to continue negotiating with them to see how much credit. Are we really going to get a 60% credit by moving that water over to another well or saving it? Those are the things we'd have to look at. It's not a guarantee at this point.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Robert. All right. So Jay Williams asks a really good question, and you asked the same question that Michael Hanna, I think it was, no, it might have been, no, actually, I don't think it was Michael, but another member of the steering committee asked, if the MSBU does not pass, what happens? And the question that Rick did not really have an answer for us, in the fact that when an and again, Commissioner Dallari, feel free to chime in. If I am reading my notes from what Rick said correctly, they've never really had an MSBU go out to the voters that doesn't get approved, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Deborah, if I may rephrase your answer a little bit. When we meet with the public before we set up the MSBU, we're going to try to understand what the public wants and where those lines need to be drawn, because we talked about that. Which properties are in the tier 1, which properties are in the tier 2. By doing that, and with all the education and the hard work of the citizens, and it's going to take a lot of hard work. I will tell you that when we did Rolling Hills, I actually walked that neighborhood with them a couple of times. And my commitment to you all is I'll be doing that with Deer Run as well. That's why a lot of these, if not all of the MSBUs have passed, because of the hard work of the citizens that want it. If the citizens don't want the MSBU, it's going to be hard for me to sell this to the other commissioners.
Okay, I think that's a good answer. Brianna, and you were not the only person who came in late. Feel free to ask your question, and if we have already covered it, I'll give you the short version. Let's see. Another question from the chat. Vicky asks, can the county, if they purchase the course and the permit that comes with it, can the cup be extended if you negotiate it with the St. John's Water Management District?
And the answer, Deborah, that is yes. I think I talked about that a little bit. The Water District, Management District is always trying to reduce cups. Right now, what they've done in the past, and I'm going to give you a little bit of history, they've allocated too much water across all of Central Florida. So they're trying to reduce everyone's. So when we go back to negotiate for this cup, they're going to try to reduce it. And that's where we're going to have to negotiate with them. We'll get involved, the county, as well as our attorneys. And then once we do that, then we're going to have to negotiate again about how much of the credit we get because you're not going to get gallon for gallon, because Deer Run is not very close to our well site, even though you may think it is from a water or a geology standpoint, it's not. And so that's going to have to be negotiated as well.
Okay, question from Jeffrey Hoffman. I think I know the answer to this, but I will defer. The question is, if a person who owns a home currently in Deer Run, when their property enters into an MSBU, are they responsible as the owner for paying off the MSBU if they sell before the term period is over? Or does that simply transfer? Does the MSBU charge transfer to the new buyer when the property is sold? And I believe it transfers to the new property, but I'll just defer.
Yeah, Deborah, the way I've always been told by our attorneys, this is a contract with the property, not the property owner. And so it runs with the land. So it transfers. If you sell your property, it transfers to the new owner.
Okay. This next question is for the commissioner. Rick Spear would like to know the part of the package that refers to the Wekiva golf course, the purchase price for that Wekiva part of the deal, who or where would that funding come from?
It's going to come from the same funding that we're purchasing the Deer Run golf course for. It's a total of $14 million. And right now, the county is figuring out how to achieve that. The purchase of Deer Run and Wekiva is not coming from the MSBU. That's coming from the county coffers itself.
Mr. Trent Brace has a question. For some of you who don't know, I'm going to preface this question. For some of you who don't know, one of the major owners of the former country club at Deer Run and also the Wekiva Golf Course was Robert Dellarusso. And Mr. Dellarusso, very sadly, a few weeks ago, he passed away. And there was some questions and some concerns at the time of his passing, what would happen to Deer Run? And so the question that Trent has asked is, who are you negotiating, who is the county negotiating with now that Mr. Dellarusso has passed away? And I'm going to let the commissioner tackle that one.
So the person that I've been dealing with, his name is Chad Bartley. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He is an owner with the LLC with Bob Dellarusso. It's a dual partnership. He has the right to negotiate it. The remaining people, because when Dellarusso died, obviously his heirs are acknowledging that there's a contract on the table, and they're going to acknowledge the fact that Chad Bartley is going to continue negotiating it if we move forward with the purchase, or if we're not, then they're going to try to develop the property.
And I will add to everyone that Deer Run and Wekiva are actually in a very good place from where this is concerned, because Mr. Dellarusso owned several different golf courses in the area. One of the ones that he owned was the closed Rock Springs Ridge property up in Apopka. And I will tell you that they have been closed a lot longer than we have, and they've been dealing with the threat of development there. And unfortunately, the city of Apopka, which was trying to facilitate their own deal, they did not, as I've understood it, and as I've been told by several people that live up in Rock Springs Ridge, they didn't have like we do, because Seminole County is that good with its employees. Our county staff had a written MOU contract in force at the time of Mr. Dellarusso's passing. Rock Springs Ridge didn't. They only had an oral contract. So I just want to say, in case anyone hasn't started to get an idea of how fantastic county staff is, we were protected because of the way that they had a written MOU at the time. So I just want to kind of put that out there. Jim Lang has a question. If we pay off our portion of the MSBU in full, would any new owner would not have to pay another MSBU? It's a one-time payment, Jim. So if you were to pay, for me, it's the $890 some odd dollars. If I pay that on my home for Eagle Circle, I would not have to pay another MSBU unless the property and community entered in at some point in the future into another separate MSBU. Which I will tell, in case anyone is not familiar, if you'd like a fun fact, we actually do have an MSBU already in force in Deer Run. Sterling Park in 1976 went into a street lighting. We went into a special street lighting district for the street lighting over in Sterling Park. We pay, I think, $25 per year for our street lighting. So it's something that you shouldn't, if any of you all are getting scared or you're concerned or you're hesitant about what an MSBU is, for any of you who live in Sterling Park, you may not have known it, but you actually already are paying into an MSBU and have been since 1976. Let's see. Kathy Frazier. So Kathy's question is about the MSBU, and basically the resident buy-in will negotiate the purchase. I'm not going to lie to you all, and this is a discussion that I've had with both Commissioner Dallari and a couple of members of the staff. The MSBU process, if the county approves this next week, and the next step is going forward with the MSBU process. Rick Durr says that we will begin that process immediately in August. I don't know from our standpoint if we will be ready to move, but I know as residents, we've been fighting for Deer Run for 2.5, almost 3 years. We're going to do what we have to do to get to where we need to go. So there will be some room for negotiation so that we can get this project to be the best project it can be to meet the needs of our residents, so that there's not really, I'm hoping when all of this is said and done, although we're going to have to work hard to get people to return their ballots, I know people are going to want to do this, and it's not something that I think we're going to have to twist very many arms for. At least that's what I hope. So I hope that kind of answers her question. Question from Ron Gregory. This is for you, Commissioner Dallari. The question is, if the county doesn't buy the Deer Run property, then development could happen. But what are the odds that the green space requirements from the original PD would be overruled, allowing new development?
Here's what I can tell you, because when you talk about land use, it goes into quasi-legislative judicial proceedings. We will have a public hearing. The developer will have the opportunity to speak to the P&Z Planning and Zoning Board. There'll be a public hearing on that. They'll then make their recommendations to us. Then it'll come in front of the county commission. It'll also be another public hearing. And then based on the evidence that's presented to us at the time of that hearing, we'll be taking a vote. And if the developer likes the vote, he'll accept it. If not, he has the ability to go to court and to challenge our ruling. And at that point, I can't tell you what the judge is going to do.
I think this goes back to what I mentioned to everyone, and I'm going to reiterate it just again. When we've been trying to find the best possible solution to saving Deer Run, to preserving our open space, there was a long time, there were a lot of questions, a lot of ideas were thrown out, and this, I think, is a solution. It's not the best possible outcome that we could have hoped for, because I know many people would have preferred that the golf course stay open to be run as a golf course. But I think it's something that most people could live with, and it is the option that gives us the best possible outcome for our homes. Because I will tell you, the three things that I have been concerned about as a resident: flooding, traffic on Eagle Circle, and what the capacity issues at Sterling Park Elementary are going to look like. And I can only imagine, and I'm sure many of you can imagine, because I've commiserated with many of you, if we had a couple hundred more homes plopped out in the middle of what is now the golf course, they say about 2 to 4 people per home. Although nowadays, if those were 3 and 4 bedroom homes, I think we might have more than 3 to 4 people living in those homes. Imagine the traffic. Imagine the flooding. Imagine what capacity will happen. And for those of you who don't know what happens when schools are over capacity, aside from the hardship that's put on our students, let me give you this wonderful, wonderful word that some of you will remember, but most of you won't. It's called redistricting. And that means that a lot of people like to think that Sterling Park is a neighborhood school. I hate to tell everyone this, but there is unfortunately no such thing as a neighborhood school. So that it's very possible that when redistricting would be done, that students who live on Eagle Circle could be bused to other elementary schools like Redbug. You could end up going to Keith. You could end up going to English Estates, because all of those schools are concurrent to Sterling Park. And redistricting is not fun. The last time we had an elementary school redistricting was when Longwood Elementary closed, I want to say around 2012. I'm probably not saying the right year because I'm doing this off the cuff, but it was many years ago. Most people weren't here for it, and those who were, remember, rezoning is never a fun thing. So that's why I'm going to say we want to avoid rezoning at all costs. We don't want those homes built on the course. And I think that having the county purchase this as a coast, as a property for use as a park is really a good thing.
Deborah, may I add one thing?
Yes, please do.
The only way to control a piece of property is to own it. That's it.
I agree. All right, we are running short on time, so we've got about 3 more questions that I'm going to go through, and then we're going to wrap up. But question is, how can our HOAs help push our decision for the commissioners? Here is how I will tell you. Number 1, show up on Tuesday. Be there in your Save Deer Run shirts. Be there with your signs. Even if you don't want to speak, I can, again, reiterating what I said at the beginning of the meeting, for those of you who weren't here, a picture's worth 1,000 words. The commission chamber holds a couple hundred people. I want to see every seat filled if possible. I want to see us holding our signs, because I can tell you, having people, because I've been up on a dais before and I've had parents, a lot of unhappy parents, come up to me when I've been doing my work as a college professor, and having parents who are upset coming at you and saying, I need you to do the right thing for the community. I need you to do the right thing for my child. I need you to do the right thing for my family. It's very hard to stare back at those people and say, I can't do what you're asking me to. Sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes, unfortunately, the answer is no. But I want to give our commission a reason to say yes to Deer Run. So please show up 9 o'clock in the parking lot at 1101 East First Street in Sanford. If you can't be there, then send in your emails. Send them to Kendra. Commissioner Dallari will make sure that we had a total at the height of the meeting tonight. We had 81 people show up. I know that on Tuesday, when he makes his comments on this, he's going to say we had 81 residents that were part of the town hall that I spoke with. And here's what they said. Let them know in writing. That's the best thing that I will tell you, Jean. Let's see, the next question. I think the last question we have, I'm trying to read these very quickly, forgive me. Commissioner Dallari, I have a question that you may or may not be able to answer. Why would the county be willing to pay $7 million for Deer Run?
There's a couple of reasons. One, we did an appraisal. If you look at the two of them, it's appraising more than what the asking price is. That's number one. Number two, we're actually going to, in the long run, save money when it comes to the groundwater. Number three, or next, is what Deborah was talking about, TMDLs, total maximum daily loads of pollutants. We'll be saving a couple $100,000 there a year on that as well. But more importantly, we're actually adding green space to an existing community. Think about this. How many communities can you go to add existing acreage to open space permanently? By buying Deer Run and McIver, it's a total of 275 acres. Opportunities like this only come along maybe once in a lifetime of a community. I think it's an opportunity that we should take. I think by putting this property together, saving both on the groundwater, the TMDLs, the environment, helping the watershed. So you're helping the Lake Jessup watershed, and you're also helping the McIver watershed. Two different watersheds that are in need of help. But more importantly, we're preserving this area for generations to come, so that anyone that lives in Deer Run or the McIver is going to have open space for generations to come. It's a dollar issue. I think we save money, but more importantly, I think it's a quality of life issue. And then it's also an environmental issue. Those are three big issues that I believe are important for us to invest in this. If you do not take this next step, I can't force you to do that. But as a county commissioner, I can tell you that it's important for us to invest in neighborhoods. This is an investment. Anyone that lives near a park, their property value is going to go up at least 15%. We actually have the reports that show us that. So we're actually investing in your homes to do that. But more importantly, you cannot pave over paradise, just like the song said. They built a parking lot. You have to preserve open space for generations to come. That's why I know that Deer Run and McIver is a good deal, not just for the county, but for the community and for citizens of this area. That's why I think that's why I want to move forward with it. I'm only speaking for myself. I am not representing the county commission. You'll hear me say these same things on the dais come Tuesday and in the weeks to come. That's why I'm moving forward with this. That's why I started this, I think, 2 years ago. And I'm willing to put all my political capital on the line to do it. That's why I'm doing it.
Well, on that note, I don't think I can top that. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and just to there's one question, Marilinda, I think asked, when will this recording be available on YouTube? It is being recorded. I'm going to try and get it up sometime over the weekend, but I may not get it up before the meeting on Tuesday. I can't guarantee that I will. What I would strongly recommend to everyone, there was a newsletter that was published today on the Save Deer Run website. It summarizes a lot of the information in very short form. It's a 2-page newsletter that I put out today. You can go on the website and look at the county presentation that I screen shared. You can go and see probably more information than you would want to read about this process. But come out on Tuesday, come out, meet us at 9 o'clock. We will have fun, be there representing. It'll be the day that Save Deer Run goes to Sanford. So thank you all for joining us this evening. I want to say thank you to Commissioner Dallari for coming out. He's always been a tireless advocate for our community. Really want to thank him for his continued support. And most of all, I want to thank all of you, because we cannot Save Deer Run without your support. So I will look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday, either in physical form or in spirit. Send us your positive vibes, if nothing else, because we definitely need them. I hope everyone has a great night, and I will see you then. Take care.